Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game, the podcast where I, your host, Connor McCabe, bring on a guest to hear from them about a meaningful video game from a particular moment in their life. This is a special edition of the show, one of the co-op series, co-op episode 43, where today I'm going to be joined by two people to discuss Alan Wake 2. And this is the first co-op episode of the entire year. This year this is a monthly show that everybody gets for all of the engineer toads on our Patreon, but it does live on YouTube as well. And the theme this year for the listeners, if you've been listening to our shows, you'll know, but we're talking about sequels all year. Some of them are down the barrel like this. Others are going to be a little wacky. But a little bit of housekeeping before I introduce our guests is that if you're listening to us on Patreon, thank you so much for your support. I hope you enjoy this monthly podcast. Let me know in the Discord what you thought about Alan Wake 2. And if you want to take a guess at some of the sequels we're covering this year, feel free to do that as well. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks so much for watching. If you want to subscribe to the channel and like this video, you'll probably see more awesome stuff like this. And without further ado, I'll introduce our guests. Because, wait a second, this is weird. I don't remember. Looks like someone's done some rewrites on this podcast. It's feeling a little ominous. I can't quite put my finger on it. You know, I better introduce my guests, a couple of detectives to help me out with this one. First and foremost, making... I could have counted before, but I don't know. I'm going to guess his fourth appearance on a co-op episode. It's none other than host of Get Played, Matt Apodaca.
What's up, buddy? How you doing, friend?
Hey, I'm doing so great, and I feel a lot more secure already having somebody else here.
I know.
Because it's a little scary where I'm at here.
Are you like coming
Bright
to me
Falls.
from the future, or like what? Like what is actually? Are you like a vision of something that has yet to occur?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I feel like I sort of have pinned myself as the Alan Wake of this podcast since I described you two as the detectives.
I'm the Scratch to your Alan Wake. Is that true?
I feel like you're both kind of this. Well, you're Scratch, and then maybe our next guest is Zane, and we're totally gonna unpack what all that means. Joining us as well is just the Alan Wake czar, the community manager over at MinnMax and video game lawyer, Haley MacLean.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hey, you're so welcome. Welcome back. Just for yet another edition of you talking about Remedy and Alan Wake. Can you believe it?
Yum. I live off this shit. This is my bread and butter. More Alan Wake talk. Down.
Now, I'm sure I think we talked to you a little bit about Control as well on the first episode, and we'll get into it, I'm sure, a little later. But I also, having not played that game, I'm the only one on the show who hasn't. I'm really interested to hear. I would love to get a deep dive from you on that as well at some point, just as a fan and as someone who likes to hear you talk about these games. So that's just a request I'm putting out there.
Go over Control
Okay,
too.
so you want us to do some work? Is that's what I'm hearing?
I kind of would like if you both would do this for me.
Okay.
But Haley, welcome back. It's so good to get to talk to you again. We're here, of course, to do a deep dive, a bit of an overview episode on Remedy's Alan Wake 2. If you are, whether you're a subscriber or not to the Super NPC Radio Patreon, we did an overview on Alan Wake 1. So if you're hearing this and you're like, oh, I'd like to listen to those in order, if you're a subscriber or you're on our YouTube, there's a video for you waiting, a nice video podcast where we get into that. But what I wanted to do, folks, to set the table a little bit, is talk about our personal histories with the series, and I know in Alan Wake in general, being that this is a new game, and it's not all the time that on these co-op episodes that we actually cover a game that came out quite recently, there's probably not going to be as much to talk about as our histories with this second game, since they kind of just happened. But Haley, since we have gotten to hear a little bit of your history with the series, would you mind giving us sort of like a truncated version of your experience with Remedy and this game in general?
Yeah, I mean, I became a Remedy super fan in like a 2-month span. It's very quick. I adore what Remedy's doing, and I wish I'd heard of them sooner. But although they kind of have been doing a lot recently, so maybe this is a good time to jump in. But I had never played the first Alan Wake, and I remember watching some of the trailers for Alan Wake 2 and just thinking, oh, it's kind of a Resident Evil thing. I don't know if I've played some Resident Evil, but more so to just be like, haha, yeah, like not because I'm like a huge super fan of the series, just to get scared.
Sure.
So I was like, I don't know if this is going to be a me game. Oh, well. And I remember watching those trailers during some, like that one where the Saga's going into the coffee shop and the deer mask guy pops out, like those little tastes they gave us like a year or so ago. And I was like, I don't know. And then I was just like get bored, and I had just got my Steam Deck. And I was like, what can I play on Steam Deck? And Alan Wake was on sale on Steam. And I was like, you know what? I'll try it. Let me see. Like, maybe I'll like it, and I'll see what's going on with Alan Wake 2. And then I started playing that game, and I was like, oh, whoa, wait, this game is so freaking fun. Like, I love it. And I've heard some people say, you know, it doesn't really age very well. Other people say it ages fine. I'm on the side of it ages fine. Mm-hmm. I think it still plays well. It's very clunky, and the flashlight mechanic's pretty silly and dumb. You use flashlight and shoot your bullet 5 times over and over. But it was doing such interesting stuff with narrative that I was like, okay, I'm into this. So then I was like, I'll play Control. Let me try Control. Play Control. Control's amazing. Control is so good. It's like the opposite of Alan Wake, but still in the same vibe where you're so powerful now, whereas before you were like a slow running writer. Now you're God who can fly and chuck things across the room, and you're the director, and you're awesome, and you're Jesse. So that was pretty fun to go from that. And that's when they kind of started implementing more of that intermediary, like layering of motion capture or real life actors over top of things and playing around with that kind of stylization stuff. And I was like, oh my God, that looks so cool. I love that. And then played the DLC for Control. That was the Alan Wake focused one. I didn't play the other DLC, but I just wanted to make sure I played that too before Alan Wake 2. And then Alan Wake 2 came out, and I just fell in love with it from the get-go. Just as soon as I started playing it, I was like, this is special. This is something really special. And just taking beats. I can't really think of a time where I would be playing a game and I'd put down the controller to think critically and analytically about the literary influences of a media that's a game, like to really think like, wow, what were they trying to do there? I think they did it. That's so interesting. Like, let me boil over that before going to the next section. A game hadn't really done that for me in a long time, so I've absolutely fell in love with it, and now I'm just like playing Alan Wake and Dead by Daylight, playing Alan Wake and Fortnite, like doing anything Alan Wake related. They give me all the crumbs. I'm like, give it to me, please.
You know, unfortunately, I've seen, and not to, you know, bask in your sort of missed opportunity, but I've seen you also lament missing out on like an Oh Dear Diner like mug or thermos or something. Which I didn't know they even were selling those anywhere, and so I saw your tweet and was like, I want that now.
Yeah, like they sold this thermos that sold out in 10 seconds, and then the game studio head Sam Lake was like, don't worry, we're gonna be making more. Like, don't buy from scalpers, we promise we'll make more. And every single time they make more and release them, like 12 seconds later they're gone. And I'm like, jeez. I just want a thermos. I got this old Gods of Asgard vinyl from Poets of the Fall. Like, sells it themselves. So it's like all of the Alan Wake 1 and 2 and Control song, not all of them, like the best ones, like the Ashtray Maze song for Control, you know, Champion of Light, Herald of Darkness, like all those really big hitting ones are on that vinyl. And even though it's not like, it doesn't say Alan Wake on it, it's like the closest I can get to an Alan Wake vinyl. So I was like, I'm buying it, and it's been fun to have.
You're in, and like so thank you for catching us up a bit. Like a lot of that, because I've heard some of it before, was familiar, but it is fun to get us up to the present. Matt, I'd love to hear from you too, because you, about a month ago, I found out my boy was wake pilled, and I couldn't have been happier.
Yeah, so I think it was in November of last year, of 2023. I got it was because it coincided with getting my my PlayStation Portal. For some reason, I chose the Alan Wake remaster to be the game that I broke in my PlayStation Portal with, and I don't know why I made. I like, to this day I don't know. I don't know why I made that choice. I very similarly purchased Alan Wake on sale on Steam when I got my Steam Deck.
Oh, wow.
I did that because I was like, oh, I heard this game is good, and I know that the second one's coming out. Maybe I'll play that, and then just never got around to it. But then realized I had the remaster because of being, a PlayStation Plus subscriber. So I was like, oh, I'll play this. I'll play the remaster. People seem to see that the remaster is fine, and I spent about half the game wondering if I liked it or not. Right, like because I was like, oh, this is like fun, and like I kind of can't stop playing it. But do I like this? Is this like for me? Because I'm someone who has tried to watch Twin Peaks many times in my life and like just can't connect with it. And I do think that I have it in me to like it, because I like things that have been influenced by it. But I've never been able to watch past like 3 or 4 episodes of Twin Peaks. And so the stuff that reminded me of Twin Peaks in this game was sort of rubbing against me, and I was sort of like, that stuff's kind of annoying, but I think having the flashlight is like cool. Like, I think that's cool. And like the story is interesting enough. I want to know what's going on. Like the mystery is good. I would like to know what's going on here. And then by the time I got to the end of it, I was like, no, I actually love this. This is like an all timer. Like, it's such a great game to me. I love this. And then did not plan on jumping into Control. Was going to go straight into Alan Wake 2, decided, but I'm lightly hearing that there's like a shared, universe here. I'm annoying. I'm annoying, and I'll like that. So I'll jump in and play Control. And Control, it's like, Control skyrocketed into like some of my favorite video games ever, like territory. Like I like that game just from an aesthetic standpoint too. Like I think brutalist architecture is so weird and like unsettling, and so the fact that that's all there is that you can see really in the oldest house, and Jesse is such an interesting character, and like you said, the powers that you get in that game are immediately fun. Like every time you get a new power, it's instantly good. Like it's always just good, and it feels great to play. And that game has a bunch of stuff in it that scratches my brain in the way that Lost used to scratch my brain, like things where there's like a mystery behind the mystery, sort of, where there's like something else going on, but then you find these videos of Dr. Darling, and you're like, what is this? Like, what are we doing here? This is so interesting. And then I finished that game. I did both DLCs and just absolutely loved it. Thought about doing it again, just was like, oh, I'll play this. Wow. I'll just play this game forever. Probably. I loved it. I think the gameplay in that game is so tight and so good, and tight in a like not in like a slang for cool way, like in a like in an effective way. Like it's great. Like I love the like when you go into the, I can't remember what they're called now, but when you go into those training modes, kind of, where it's like a different dimension sort of thing, and you can like navigate. I love that kind of stuff. There's the onboarding in that game is excellent. Like for everything that you get, it's great. And then I jumped into Alan Wake 2, knowing that they're leaning more into full on horror. The first game is, I think,
has like one jump scare.
Has one jump scare, and I would say is spooky, not scary.
Yeah.
Right? If they were going to make a distinction, that's, I think, a fine line to draw. Alan Wake 2, for me, is scary all the time. It's just scary from the beginning to the end. But it is a credit to Remedy's storytelling, the performances they get for these games, both in video game and in live action, and just like the gameplay in this one is, I think, some of their best, tightest gameplay. And it was worth it, even though I was scared every second I was playing the game. It also has this stuff in it that I love, that like, I love that sort of like neo-noir, like True Detective style, like detective story. It has that sort of like grounded, it's grounded, but it's also like a weird type of like fantasy realism kind of, where it's like almost exactly, it's like 1 to 1.5 instead of like 1 to 1, where it's like, oh, like this is sort of like our world, but everything's like a little different. Like something's just a little off in this world, in this picture of our world. And I loved it and played through it, and was very sad to miss out actually on the Alan Wake Fortnite skin, because I don't play a lot of Fortnite, but the thing that gets me back into Fortnite is when a skin is there that I think is funny. And I think it would be funny to, have Alan Wake hit the gritty or whatever.
Is it gone now? Is that opportunity?
Yeah, it's gone for now. I don't know if
The
sometimes
shop
they bring them
cycles
back.
through.
Yeah.
Okay. Dang, what a bummer.
Yeah.
You can get Timothy Chalamet from Dune or something.
Oh, guys, I gotta go.
And we never saw him again.
Yeah, I have to run out and go buy it. Like, what?
Matt, when you
Yeah.
were talking to me, because we're often gabbing and texting about games.
We're neighbors.
We're neighbors too. We do run into each other almost once, maybe once every 2 weeks, just
I
on
saw
the
you,
same street.
not to dox you. I saw you on a run the other day, and I was getting in my car to go to work, and I didn't want to stop you because you looked like you were in the zone. But I forgot to text you about it until just now.
Well,
remembering.
I'm glad that you saved it for a podcast to announce to the world that I'm an athlete and just
He's back
running
on
around.
it. He was. You got to know why I didn't interrupt him. He was in the zone.
I was cooking. Probably
Listen
listening
to Champion. Listen
Yeah.
to Champion of Light. In
Yeah,
your headphones,
yeah.
maybe.
Oh.
He did have a
just
flashlight.
on
Yeah, it was
loop.
weird.
Yeah. It was 9:30 in the morning, but he had a flashlight.
Yeah.
Definitely was listening to a video game podcast as I'm wont to do. But Matt, when you were telling me when we were talking about this that you were even playing the first game, I didn't want to like let you know how excited I was about that, because I
Yeah.
also wasn't sure. Like I played that first game as well, and as Haley and I talked about on the first podcast we did, I was also kind of like you, Matt, wasn't sure if I liked it, if what I was playing was
Yeah.
good. By the end, I definitely came out positive and super intrigued.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, Matt could be having a similar experience, and I was so pumped once you got into Control and you were like, I also want to play Alan Wake 2. I was so excited. It was like a friend of yours who starts watching like your sports team or something.
Yeah.
To make an analogy. But that was so exciting. So I'm so glad that you got into it too.
And there's also like, I know Remedy did Max Payne 1 and 2 and 3, but I think 3 is a little different than the other 2 in certain ways. And Quantum Break. I haven't played Alan Wake's American Nightmare yet, but I own that and Quantum Break, which I'm more interested in now after having played Alan
too.
Wake 2.
Yeah.
Haley, had you said you were also interested in that, or had you gone back already?
I didn't go back and play American Nightmare, but I had a few people tell me to go back and play it. I was intrigued to go back and play it because I learned that DLC in a contained manner is one of his escape attempts from the dark place, which is a very fun thing to think about.
Yeah.
So like just the fact that it's contained within a media unit is like, this is one attempt. It'd be kind of fun to know as much as I know about the dark place and how it works now and go look at that and see if I could see anything, any kind of lore bits. And this is a totally random tidbit as well, but it's really funny. His inclusion in Dead by Daylight, Alan Wake recently got added as Survivor Dead by Daylight, is canon to the Remedy universe. So
What?
he wrote the Dead by Daylight universe into existence via a Night Springs episode. So Dead by Daylight is him trying to get out, and he wrote all the other characters in that world to existence, and that's canon. And that's like his description in Dead by Daylight, and Remedy has confirmed that's canon. So Dead by Daylight is one of his attempts to escape the dark place as well.
Alan Wake is God. He is God, and I will go to church if we pray to Alan Wake.
So Alan Wake has written all your favorite video games, probably.
This rocks. I love that. That's the type of stupid like video game shit that's my favorite. Like I just know a little bit about like how they got like how they had to justify Sora being in Super Smash Brothers Ultimate. There's like a canon reason for why he's there. And
Really?
it's like, it's like insane. It's just like, it's not like, because they're very particular about, they're just very particular about Kingdom Hearts things, which is very strange. And like, because the lore is so inscrutable, they had to come up with a reason, to like, so that it made sense that he was in Super Smash Brothers Ultimate.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, if we ever see, Alan Wake coming to Sora's rescue in Kingdom Hearts 4, I just know that you might explode from joy.
Yeah, I'd be like, just let him cook. You don't need, put the Keyblade down and pick up a pen, dog. He's got it. Or a typewriter.
Because I've talked about my history on the previous episode, I'll also keep it fairly brief. And like we talked about before, hearing Haley on the MinnMax show talk about the first game got me intrigued, and I'll reiterate again, it was like the passion and excitement about that game, the game I had never heard of outside of knowing, I think seeing at Summer Games Fest that Alan Wake 2 was coming up, and I was like, I don't know what the heck this is. I got the first version from a retro store down here. Matt went to Game Realms and picked up the 360 version for $8.
Wow, you dog.
That's a bargain.
And wait, and Haley, did you play the remaster of the first one or the original as well?
The original, because I bought it on Steam to play on my Steam Deck, and then a few minutes in, I realized I liked it so much I wanted to stream the whole thing. So then I streamed the whole thing on my PC. But I purchased it on Steam, and Steam didn't have the remastered version for whatever reason. They just don't have the licensing to sell it, I guess. But I was like, should I buy it again on PlayStation? And I was like, nah, I'll just play the regular. And it held up. It looked fine. There were some draw distance problems sometimes, like those weird open areas where you're driving around.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Those were a bit clunky, and those ran quite very bad. But everything else looked fine.
Yeah, there was something when I played the first one charming about it being such a 2010 Xbox 360 game that I kind of appreciated. But played the first game, like I already said on this episode, enjoyed it, didn't love it, but was super intrigued. And when Haley and I first talked about it, I was like, hey, are there answers to some of these things I'm wondering about? And you were like, sometimes, because you were already playing the second game. I've yet to play Control. I really want to play Control, but getting into this game, I played Alan Wake 2. We had just wrapped up our Resident Evil 2 remake games club. So I was very much in like third person action horror game, where you're also in a different way using a flashlight and your ammo is precious. So I was kind of like, it's like I had been working out to play that game, to play Alan Wake 2. Kind of was in the perfect spot. And I ended up loving 2. And I'll get into so much. Like, it's, as I was playing, it was one of those games where I couldn't put it down. And it also jumped, like Control jumped for Matt so high into like some of his favorite games ever. Alan Wake 2 is like fighting to get in my top 10 personal games. So, and we'll get into why. A little additional table setting just about what Alan Wake 2 is, even though we've been sort of, talking around it for a while, is that it's the direct sequel to Alan Wake, which originally came out in 2010. This game was released last year in 2023 by Remedy Studios as well. Sam Lake remains the creative director, but also assisted by Kyle Rowley. The writers as well were Sam Lake, Clay Murphy, Tyler Burton Smith, and a lot of the setting and sort of characters return from the first game with the addition of so much more to it. Talking about Alan Wake 2 as well, it was, people listening to this right now, if you're a fan of the game, it was really well received. It was nominated for a ton of game awards at different outlets, not just the Game Awards proper themselves. It was released for PlayStation 5, Windows, and the Xbox Series systems on October 27th, 2023. But this time, you're not just playing as Alan Wake, our tortured author as he is, but you're also playing as Saga Anderson, the FBI agent. So you're switching between these two characters as you play the game. A really popular year, or like that trend has become really big, by the way, in like especially PlayStation. I feel like big games. Not that this is just PlayStation, but
Yeah.
like I also played right before this Spider-Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
The year before was God of War. Even though that doesn't feel as much like a 50-50 split.
Rift Apart.
Oh yeah, Rift Apart as
and
well.
Rift Apart does it beautifully. I love it in Rift Apart.
Big trend, it seems, this like dual protagonist thing.
Two of those games, Insomniac games, though. So they took the lessons learned in Rift Apart into Spider-Man 2.
Yes, absolutely. As far as some like table setting goes, what I do want to say for the listener as well is that if you've listened up to this point, just so you know, there are going to be major story spoilers for this episode as we get into it. So if you're planning to play this game and you don't want something spoiled, I'd recommend putting a pause on the pod and then resuming this once you're done with the game. But moving forward, just expect that to be the case. For either of you two, Matt or Haley, as far as table setting and just important bullet points before we get into what we thought about the game, is there anything else that you two would like to add before we start elaborating on some of that stuff?
I guess for me, I would say I think Alan Wake 2 is maybe Remedy's best game. And it's maybe playing Control and Alan Wake 2 back to back. I might need a little distance to really think about this for a little longer, but I think Control is still my favorite, only because it's more of my style, more of my zone, and it didn't scare me every 10 seconds.
Yes. Cool.
I can agree that I think Control has better gameplay. Like, I think moment to moment the gameplay in Control is more fun, but I think Alan Wake 2 is a better video game for what it does narratively, to the point that it has like straight up masterpiece status for me in my brain. Just they're doing things that only games could do, but no one else is doing. So It feels so insanely fresh and amazing. And now anytime after today we see games layering, real life actors over top of gameplay, we're going to say, oh, they're remedying it. Like, they essentially are just being such pioneers, and they were playing with those concepts with the first Alan Wake and Control, and then they really like tied everything together to be this insanely purposeful and cool thing in Alan Wake 2 that I just have to be like, they need their roses. This game is insanely fun, and I'm willing to forgive the somewhat sometimes boring point and shoot, like in between, clunky gameplay that can happen sometimes. Just for what they're doing narratively and with the story and everything, it just takes it to the next level.
It's interesting that you call that out specifically, because in this, before we started recording, I mentioned this podcast that Connor sent both of us that I listened to most of, where it's an interview with Sam Lake, and he's talking about that like live action stuff and that stuff that you don't see in a lot of games that are present in a lot of Remedy games. And he was saying that's like, because he was talking about Remedy and like he wasn't considering them a AAA studio, and then the host of the show was like, "No, you guys are a AAA studio. Like, people consider those games to be of like top quality and like in both scope and in execution." And he was like, "Yeah, I guess it's just," he was talking about it in a way that he was like, "We just try to make choices to like that are bold, that like a smaller studio would make, because big studios don't tend to take as big of risks as like things like that." And I thought that was just so interesting. That was a good conversation, and it's, for people listening that want to know what it was, is the AIAS Game Maker's Notebook podcast, and it's just there's just a lot of good chunky little like tidbits about production that I'm a nerd for, and love that kind of stuff. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
That's really cool. Yeah, like it's there's some game studios that are AAA that make games to fit cookie cutter formats and then make money, which fair enough. That's why a lot of people make TV or books or what have you. Like I think about just I don't know why this comes to my head first, but like the Watch Dogs series, that is the most video games ever. Go here, do this, button, upgrade, new gadget, and then final cutscene done, and you don't really remember who the characters were, like you don't really care. It's just like that was something to play, and that's fine. But I just respect studios that are like, okay, what are games? What are we used to seeing? And what can we do that's really different? Because those are the ones that stick out. Like Baldur's Gate 3 was another one this year. Like that took the concept of an open world narrative game and just absolutely blew it out from every single angle to the point that now, if I were to go back to Skyrim, I have such fond memories of Skyrim. If I were to play Skyrim after Baldur's Gate 3, it would look like the most clunkiest, nothing going on narrative, even though that's fine. That's what Skyrim is. It's just that sometimes studios just, you can tell they go into a project like, okay, we can't just, this isn't just going to be a game where we make money. Let's make something we're all really nerds for and passionate about, and that passion comes through. And Alan Wake 2 is 1,000% one of those games where they had a vision and they were like, we're doing it, done, put the money into it. And it feels AAA, but it's not so... I don't know. It's doing such new things that's why I really like 2023. Is there's so many devs doing such new stuff and being so adventurous and spunky with what they could do with games. Because for so long it just kind of felt like the same old, but still fine. But as soon as a studio like this that clearly has such a creative team, I want to listen to what they talk about. I want to see their whiteboards. I want to see what they think about and how they make decisions relating to narrative, because it's the kind of thing, it's like a book that you'd reread over and over instead of just a game you play over and over. It's like that's very much what I think of when I think of Alan Wake 2.
Absolutely. I was, gushed over the Double Fine Psych Odyssey doc. Like, I want to doc about the making of this game, or just, even if it was just narrative stuff. And there's way more about this game that I enjoy that is not even narrative related that we'll get into as well. But yeah, to Matt's point too, hearing Sam Lake talk with the interviewer about them being more limited than a AAA studio actually would benefit them in certain ways. And I've heard other devs talk about how limitations can breed such creativity and big swings, because you can't, like, there's just certain ways you're not going to be able to, because he's talking to an Insomniac dev.
Ted Price is his name.
And you're not, like, Remedy doesn't have the same resources that even Insomniac does. As beautiful as this game looks, there's a lot less that they're able to do in scope-wise. So, yeah, that was one thing that I was thinking about throughout the game. I think as well, a bit of like a thesis statement that I have, or thought that I have about this game, is that they're not only like taking big swings and being bold with their choices. I really feel like personally that they are executing on an extremely high level with those swings as well, which is like, it'd be there's plenty of games I play that I'm like, oh, I see what they're going for, and I really appreciate that, even if it's like, I don't think that they nailed it. I felt like this game, for me personally, nailed so many of those things that they tried, which was why I kept being like, how are they doing this? As I was just playing through the game. Let's get into, like, actually maybe some more specific details about our thoughts on the game itself. There's a lot of places we could start. I think just for simplicity's sake, and we can bounce around to different topics as well. Let's start with the just story and setting of this game. And we can talk about anything that comes to our mind when it comes to that, or what it leads us to. So as we set up top a little bit, this game takes place I think it's literally 13 years later.
It's the same amount of time that it felt for us, which I like when games do that.
Yes. Very good choice. 13 years later, this entire game takes place, well, it depends on how you look at it. The game begins in Bright Falls, is I guess what we'll say, which is the setting of the first game. Alan Wake, at the end of the first game, when I don't even remember the like evil lady's name at the end of Alan Wake 1, but after he destroys her, Alan is sent to the dark place, and his wife Alice is saved. So Alan has been gone for years at this point.
That was Thomas Zane's wife. I forget her name though.
Thomas Zane's. Oh, yes, the dark lady.
Barbara?
That might be right. Yeah,
because it feels right.
I think you're right, because I kept mixing up Barbara and Cynthia for a while, but now thanks to this game, I am not mixing up who Cynthia is.
No, Cynthia is burned in my retinas when I go to bed.
Barbara Jagger.
Oh, is that her name?
Yeah.
Nice. Thanks, Matt. But Alan's gone, and this game begins by following. Well, it actually begins by following a mysterious giant naked man, who we then come to learn is Agent Nightingale from the first game. There's a great meme that I think I sent to Matt as well. Haley, I don't know if you've seen this meme going around on Twitter this last week specifically, but there's like what looks like Agent Nightingale, some drunk man, I think, passed out at like an aquarium. And he was also naked. And so I saw someone tweet that was just like, this is just the beginning of Alan Wake 2. But the game begins by, us controlling Nightingale and just basically walking up to the front of where the first cult is performing a ritual. But that's what gets us into Saga Anderson. So you were controlling Saga and Alan at different points in the game, and Saga and her partner Alex Casey have been brought to Bright Falls in order to investigate what's going on there. I can't actually remember specifically. They're investigating this murder, right, of Nightingale?
They're investigating Nightingale's murder and also just like a chain of deaths that all have weird connections. It's like on the board, right. You can see a few different ones, and they all occurred in Bright Falls. I'm pretty sure. Like one of them is the wife that the guy on the radio is always like, she's still alive. I saw her at the thing last week, and the husband's like, she's been dead for 10 years. Like, God damn it, stop talking about her on the radio. It's like all those people that have gone missing, and this is just the newest one. So the police kind of are giving up and letting the FBI take over, essentially. So they're coming in, which I find it so interesting that the FBI exists in a world where the FBC also exists. Like, which is the Federal Bureau of Control, for people who don't know what that means, which is it's almost the higher up executive branch of this world above the FBI. Yeah. The FBC's has to be above the FBI. So I was kind of a nerd for, this is jumping ahead, sorry, but just like when Estevez, the FBC character, came in and interacting with Saga, I was like, how do these two bureaus interact? This is so enlightening and interesting to hear them talk to each other and like what's allowed and what's not allowed. I was such a nerd for that.
I was like, give me all that you got. Like that's like that stuff is exactly the type of shit that I love. I love like in detective stories too, when like, different, just when different like governing bodies have jurisdiction. That's enough for me to be like,
now.
I'm like, oh, this is getting serious. They're getting mad. I love that. But they work together. And then there's other stuff. There's that other FBC agent too that you meet with one of the brothers.
Yes.
At that monitoring station that I was like, I want DLC for just this station. What is this? I was like, what? Like, this is my the hatch from Lost. Like I'm like, what's going on here? What is this? Are these everywhere? What are the rules? I just want to know what the rules are.
Yeah, like someone's been tampering with it. Like I read all the notes that people were saying it was a raccoon. He's like, this isn't a raccoon. Like he's been messing with this, and you're like, who is messing with it?
Who's messing with it? Why?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely poked around that thing a lot more than I needed to because I kept wondering if I was going to find something or like trigger something to happen. Well,
there's this ladder that's like, there's a ladder there that you can't reach. And I was like, it looks like it's locked, like about at the halfway and like folded up. And I was just like, how can I how can I get on there? I was like, there's not a way, there's not a way to, but I hope that we come back to that very specific small, maybe
one monitoring station.
That one monitoring station. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like the only one we really see in the game, but it's at a very specific place at Cauldron Lake that like we'll be passing by enough times in the story to you see a couple updates on it like you were getting at, but it draws our attention. But we can dive into as much of the story details as well, just to set the scene a little bit. Even just trying to summarize just kind of like what's happening and how it's going is kind of a challenge.
It makes sense at the start, and then the longer you talk about this game, you're like, and then, and it makes no sense. And you can't really explain it, which is the charm of it, I think.
Yes. It sort of makes sense when you're playing it and like when you're experiencing the details, but then, like you're saying, if you take a second to explain it, you sound insane.
Oh yeah,
you're like an AWE will happen, and then there's like various objects of power that appear.
Yeah,
and then we gotta make sure that the paratiliterians know what powers they have. Like so many proper nouns that you're just like, what is any of this? What does any of this mean?
And Saga knows what's going on, but everybody else thinks Saga is crazy, but she's actually not. And so then you're like, okay, well, like any other person would be like, well, if she says she knows what's going on and everyone else thinks she's crazy, but
or even when she picks up newspapers that confirm she's crazy, she still is like, nope, I don't believe that.
Those are bullshit.
Nope.
Yes, yeah. Which is just a question I was asking throughout the whole game was like, who do I believe? Like, what do I actually know? And I think actually a lot of fun of this game was trying to stay ahead of the story if I could, of like, I think this is what's happening, but I'm not confident. I remember messaging Haley a bit as well as I was sort of making my way through and being like, I'm at this point and I think this is what's going on, but I'm not exactly positive. But as far as the game goes, like I already said, we're switching between two protagonists, Saga Anderson, the FBI agent who, causes an event that has Alan emerge 13 years later from Cauldron Lake. And you also control our protagonist from the first game, Alan Wake, as he is in the dark place throughout this game, each going through their own chapters and levels. You can also switch between these two with like these mop buckets that are in certain like safe
Ati's
rooms in the game.
Bucket.
Yes.
My kingdom for Ati. I love Ati.
So yeah, you haven't played Control, Connor, so you probably don't have that love for Ati, but Ati's like the GOAT. He's the best guy in Control.
Boy.
So when I saw Ati in Alan Wake, I heard him whistling and I sprinted. I was like, oh my god, it's
my
Ati.
friend.
He's so awesome.
I love hearing that you were like overjoyed by that whistle, because when I heard that whistle in the theater for the first time, I was, or like the studio, I was frightened and I didn't want to go to what that was. Yeah.
I immediately knew it was because he whistles just like that in Control. And hearing Ati whistle means you're safe in Control. So hearing it there after a very like, what the heck is going on scene, it was kind of like, oh, I'm safe. Here's Ati. So it's interesting without the context of Control that came across as upsetting and scary.
Such a charming performance. He's such a good character. I love Ati.
Yeah.
Yes. So he was so good. So I look forward to my love for him growing as I, finally go back and play Control at some point.
Yeah, you'll have the reverse. You'll be like in Better Call Saul. If you watch Better Call Saul first and then Breaking Bad, you'd be like, oh, it's all my guys. My guys are here.
Yes, absolutely.
And then they're dead in an episode. It's like, oh, wait, what?
It's like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
So that's how you are progressing through the game. I would be curious to hear, too, from either of you, one thing I was sort of struggling with throughout the game was, when do I switch to each character? I was sort of trying to piece them out evenly because they almost have the same number of chapters. I think one person might have 8 and one has 9. I could be mistaken about that.
That sounds right.
But as you're just progressing through the game when you actually can swap back and forth, how did you two do this? I mean, Haley, were you bouncing? Were you just playing all the way through as one person?
I was going back and forth one at a time.
Gotcha.
And I don't know why I did that. It kind of, sometimes I feel like I need to subconsciously follow the rules of what I think games would want me to do instead of just choosing what I want. And I the whole reason they gave me the choice is that I could do whatever I want. But for some reason, my brain was like, I bet the optimal experience is bouncing back and forth. So I just did that. But I've heard that you could play all the way through one way or the other, and it probably wouldn't change your vibe of it too much. But I did like bouncing between, because I found the Saga Anderson sections are very combat heavy. They're scarier.
Yes.
Whereas the Alan Wake sections are meant to be more puzzly.
Yes.
Like the train station one, figuring, like, doing the layers of the story to figure out what, rewriting you have to do to figure out what to do in each section. More narrative based. So it was kind of nice to do it that way, because I went from, oh my god, I just fought 1 million people and I'm kind of tired, to just like being Alan and having just people walk by you going, Wake, Alan Wake, and like not actually fighting you. So you're just kind of like, but you don't actually have to pull out your gun all that much.
Well, let me tell you,
sort of fun to do that.
Let me tell you one of the parts I didn't like. Those scary whispers. Because then you have to then sort of play this like mental game, kind of. You can always tell which one is not like
you
just
think
a
you
shadow.
can, but then sometimes I'm
Yeah.
like, he's fake, and then he jumps out and grabs you by the neck, and you're like, ah.
Yeah, and then or just unloaded a bunch of bullets into a shadow, and like that was worthless. Those were so frightening. I jumped around, but I would do like a couple of sagas and then be like, you know what, let's go check in with Alan. I don't know if I love that I could do that whenever I wanted. I think from a story standpoint, I think maybe like if it's like, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that like the story stuff should be the story stuff. And then if you want to go back and like just kind of walk around the dark place as Alan, then you can do that at points. I feel like is fine. But like I want them to tell me what the story is and like how to do it. Like I don't want it necessarily be in whatever order or whatever. But that's like
You don't want like
minor
a Breath of the Wild
order
of the cutscenes thing, which I really didn't like that you could, because I watched one of the most spoilery ones first by mistake, and I was like, huh? Who's that just died? And I had to think of, and then I got the pieces back later, which made it worse, I thought. I didn't like that.
Without spoiling it, because we'll spoil this game, but I won't dip into spoilers for Tears of the Kingdom. I got like the last one first somehow, the last tier, like the last tier. And so there's a lot of them, and a lot of the story is where's Princess Zelda? And my Link in that game is basically like, I don't fucking know, but he knows the whole time. And so I was like, I've known for 70 hours, that where Princess Zelda is. And I don't think things like that should occur, because like some of these things in Saga's part of the game, you toward the end of the level, well, let's call it just for simplicity, you'll get like a flash from Alan Wake basically telling you what to do, like how to take down whatever boss or whatever it is. And sometimes you'll get half of the information because like it's like like they're talking
through like
space and time kind of.
Yeah, so it's some of it's jumbled. They only hear part of what each other are saying.
Yes. And so then you get the other side of it on Alan's play, but sometimes I'd be a couple ahead, I feel like, the way I was doing it. And I was like, oh, I kind of wish this wasn't tied to this specific mechanic. Like, I wish...
I think that's on purpose, though.
Oh, interesting.
Because even though I was flipping back and forth, those were still just disjointed.
Okay.
Because I think the way it works is that time doesn't work in the dark place.
Right.
So when he's talking to her, he's actually talking to her 2 conversations ahead no matter what. So he'll be like, and she'll be like, did you write my daughter in the story? And he's like, go upstairs. Like he just like doesn't like they're having
Leave me alone.
They're having different conversations at any given time. So that actually happens no matter what, I believe.
Okay, that makes sense.
I may be wrong, but that still happened to me even though I was doing them perfectly one after the other.
Interesting. Okay, because I was like, oh, I wish these were a little more, I guess, not linear, because I don't know if I need all that, but like I wish that I didn't have. I guess I like free roam as an idea, but I don't know if I needed to do it, because I'll tell you right now, I didn't do a ton of extra exploring, because I was like, I'm not going over. Like, some of my map is gray, which I sort of do feel bad about, but I've thought about firing up. There will be a DLC for this at some point. I'll be getting in there. Oh yeah, and I'm very excited about those, actually. Very interesting.
I also think that with that, the way that I kind of thought about it too was they had a few other examples where the time thing was a bit more obvious. Like, do you know when the old gods are going into the water after their performance on the beach? Mm-hmm. They're likely going down and doing the Herald of Darkness song for Alan in the past. That already happened for us, watching everything linearly. Mm-hmm. But because the dark place is so weird, they went down and had to help him, even though he just came, well, not, it was actually Scratch, but even though Alan came out of the water, they still went down and helped Alan in the past singing Herald of Darkness at that point. Because we were talking about that on the deepest dive at MinnMax. Was like, well, why'd they go in the water? And then one of our, someone in the community was like, no, they were going down to sing Herald of Darkness. It's like, oh my God, that makes me understand the dark place so much more, because it's not like things are happening like this. It's just kind of like, and then you're trying to figure out what's going on, and we're just able to view it linearly because we're watching as a player.
I watched some of the final draft stuff. I don't know if you guys have seen any of this. This is the New Game Plus section. There's like some of it is, obviously all of it is very similar, but there are some very slight, like dialogue choices, or dialogue options that are made and things like that. And there are some different interactions in there. You can meet the what do you call it? The guys from the band.
The old gods of Asgard.
At the end in the dark place as Saga, and they say something like, "Oh, you're here this time." Weird. So there's, because in that, like, this is jumping way ahead, but in that thought that it's not the story is not a circle, it's a spiral. So like this is implying that in one of in this spiral, Saga didn't see them there, but then in this next one, they were there after going into the water, and like, oh, cool, nice to see you again. They say something about, we'll see you again at some point, which is a nice, I think, tease for maybe the DLC or something.
And that's so subtle, right? Like,
yeah.
They could, you could just be on autopilot and not really hear them say that and think about it critically, but that's so cool that they do that kind of stuff.
It's very heady. That's the type of stuff that, like, I want to watch, like, and I'll leave this to somebody else to do, but once there's a comprehensive lore video or something, I'll hunker my ass down and watch 4 hours on YouTube.
Yeah, I was gonna say, nice 4.5 little hour little thing. That seems about right where that would land.
Yeah, to explain to me how the spirals work, and things like that, because I in theory understand what that is. If reality is a roguelike and you reset your stats every time you get to the end of your life and you start over, things would be a little different the second go, maybe.
It's like Hades.
It's like Hades. It's like Groundhog Day. It's like, it's all of that type of stuff. I also consider Groundhog Day, the film, a roguelike.
That's very true.
Yeah, but that's different conversation.
Yeah, but just all this stuff that we're getting into, and we don't, like, I don't want to put pressure on anyone to feel like we have to go through all of the story stuff today, because that actually probably would take forever. But if there are highlights or elements or the way they tell the story, like, I definitely want to leave space for people to share what they did enjoy. I just threw out so much of this, so, like, the mystery and the intrigue early on of playing a Saga, and as soon as I think the person in the diner, whoever it is, tells you that, like,
Rose.
It might be Rose, yes.
Yeah.
Who's, like, lamenting Logan, Saga's daughter's death, and Saga's like, I don't know what she's talking about. I was like, uh-oh, there's gonna be some stuff with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the way they ended up doling that out and giving us more information to me felt so. It was very mysterious, but also very satisfying, and it felt like they earned a lot of the tricks that they sort of pulled. And quite early on, I was like, wait, is it possible that Alan has written her into this story? And sure enough, like we find out that is the case, and sort of her life has been altered in that way. Whether it's that or something else, were there any standout story moments for either of you two, or the way that they told the story in this game, or elements they used?
I love the talk show.
Yes,
element.
I was just gonna say the Mr. Door talk show.
The Mr.
was
Door
where I knew
stuff
it was special.
Yeah, like that's just so unique and so like odd and like and unsettling and just like just cool. Like I love stuff like that, and I want to know more about. I know we'll find out more about Mr. Door at some point. It's like hinted. There's things that in the game that point to Mr. Door being Saga's father, which I think is very interesting, and I would like to know more about that, and I would like it to be not 13 years until the next Alan Wake thing comes out. I need it.
Please.
I need it immediately.
They reference him in Control as well, which I
Yes.
won't say how or why because to spoil it for Connor, but he is mentioned in Control also.
Mr.
Yes.
Door? Mm-hmm. Ooh, gosh.
Now that scene is where I was like, okay, I'm playing something I'm going to love. Like I already know it. Like this is me. This is a jam. Because just that scene alone, because I'm such a nerd for the mixed media stuff they're doing. I think that is, if I could peel back everything about this game, like yeah, I think it's well written. Yeah, I think it is narrative, whatever. I think the way they're implementing the mixed media stuff is like more of this in everything I've ever seen, because it's because not only is it just like fun to look at and exciting to see the mocapped actor's actual face sitting on a couch next to items in a video game that I can walk up to and pick up too, like all that kind of stuff just feels good as a player to see as a human being. It's just fun to see that they're taking those kind of concepts and also layering them really expertly with the whole plot too, because the whole reason we're feeling so confused in what's happening is because reality and this scary place is getting blended together, and then they're blending together like our reality, so real life actors that we could look at and they look like us, not like a video game, they're getting blended in with the game too. So it's like this double layered craziness where I feel connected to the real life actors playing the characters, who then are also connected to the gameplay characters. And then they also layer it all this sideways way too with like their studio. So we have Sam Lake, who is playing Alex Casey, who's Max Payne's face. He does the Max Payne smirk on the couch, very purposeful, trying to connect this all together. His voice is the Max Payne character. They can't call him Max Payne because they don't have the rights to Max Payne anymore. Sad. But, I bet in a perfect world they would have made that character named Max Payne and just done that. It
just would have been Max Payne. Like, it would have been so funny, too. Like, but
It essentially is.
Yeah. I like that it's Sam Lake. I think it was going to be the voice actor who sadly passed away recently. Yeah. But he was not well enough to do it, so Sam did it. But he still provided the voice. The voice, yeah. Yeah.
I love that Sam did it though, because he was exceptional. He did great.
He's so. We were talking before this. We're obsessed with this guy. I love him. I think I love him. He's so interesting and so like I don't know, like I don't think every video game developer would give a good performance in a video game. Like I don't think that that's something that everybody could or should do, right? But he has a look. He has such a particular look that it works. Like he's
having fun.
Yes.
He's genuinely having fun. And that passion comes through in the game itself, like just the fact that he's in there. Because Sam Lake also is a character. Like he writes himself into the game. You know when he has the bag over his head?
Yes.
And you have the knife and you're trying to decide, but that's Sam Lake. That's not Alex Casey or Max Payne. Like that's Sam Lake in that moment.
I lost it at that part. I was like, this
hilarious.
rules. Yeah.
And even like the breaking of character when he's dancing, like he's just smiling and having fun. Like the Alex Casey character we've seen in the game thus far probably wouldn't smile and dance like that, but Sam Lake would. So it's like, is he Alex Casey, Max Payne, or Sam Lake? And you're kind of trying to guess at any given point. And that's also what you're supposed to be feeling with the game itself when you're like, am I Alan Wake? Am I Thomas Zane? Am I getting out of here? Like, you're supposed to feel that way. And then the characters also do that with real life stuff. It's just like an expert blending of 12 or 15 different things at once with every given person, and it's never too clunky. It's just like, it's just fun. It's fun to see and fun to experience. And I think the fact that they layered it so expertly is like, even if we see other companies start to do live actor stuff layered on top of gameplay elements, like I know Hellblade, I'm playing Hellblade right now, we were talking about before, and they do that too. Like they have live actor stuff over top. And that's really cool too, not to discount that, but they're making that inclusion the thematic tie-in with the game itself too, this is why it feels so cohesive to me, and why even though that could just be a fun thing we look at, it's like, no, this has a reason that's in here, and it makes everything else better too. Yeah,
just the meta text of it is very like just so interesting, and I also like that there's an extra element of. There's Alex Casey, the director, but there's also the Alex Casey, the movie character, who are different guys. And it's like, and he's like, and Alex Casey, not the director, the detective, because then when Alex meets Alan Wake, he's like, why is this guy me? He's me. like he's like so confused as to why he's written about in these books. He's like, these are exactly what I've done. But I've never even met you before, and how do you know this? Like that stuff is so good. And I did stick around in that movie theater, and I watched all of that weird movie.
Oh, of course.
Because I was like, I need to see every single second of all of this. Yes. And I was just blown away that I thought it was even interesting at all, because it's like it doesn't have to be good. Like that's a thing like that in the video game could be just the level of those nature videos of the twins, which are funny and like quote unquote like bad on purpose, right? Yes. They're a little clunky because they're a couple of goofballs, but the fact that the movie is like interesting enough that I'm like, because it's kind of long. It wasn't like a short
15 minutes.
It's 15 minutes long.
Yeah. I'm just standing there in a theater watching a 15-minute short film and being like, is this good? Like, this is good.
Like I did as it was going on. I think 4 minutes in, I paused the game to look up how long it was.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I think I want to stick around for this. And
you
I was like,
to.
yes. And I was like, 15 minutes, sure. And there are several moments throughout this game when they are using the mixed media that we're talking about, the integrating the live action moments that they have, where this is like I don't even know how to describe what this impulse is, but as the character that I'm controlling, which I think is almost always Alan in these moments, I'm like positioning him in a way to where like I can not only see the scene that's playing out, whether it's one of those they're not visions, but those like moments he sees of Alex Casey in certain scenes that become plot points.
The overlay stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those echoes, yeah.
Whether it was the echoes or even something as I guess deliberate as like you're watching this movie, I'll position him so that he's viewing it in like a satisfying way to me visually.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'll do that subconsciously, and I'm like, what is that about as well?
Yeah.
But I'm often fascinated by like specific ways that people will play video games or interact with games, and that's just one of those I guess specifics that I have. But yeah, it's like you were saying, the mixed media stuff is so well done. It's also so satisfying in a narrative way as well. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think.
It's at the core, and it bleeds through everything.
Big time. Yeah. I think one of the earliest examples of that in the game, it's been over a month and a half since I've started it at this point, but I want to say one of the first ones that you experienced is probably a Koskela Brothers video, like Matt was referencing earlier. And I was determined. If anything in this game, I was like, I'm watching all of these. I'm not missing one. Yes. They're so charming, and it was so satisfying to me when they ended up playing a much bigger role than I expected in the narrative as well. You know, being the leader of the cult of the tree. Gosh, I just mixing up there's two cults in this game. But they were so good. I mean, the characters I think in this game were, when we did our Game of the Year episodes for Video Games, a Comedy Show, we were only allowed to nominate one character each from the year, partly because we had 15 people on that podcast and it was too much. But I cheated and I snuck in the Koskela brothers as a nominee, which did end up getting sort of like an honorable mention award, even though nobody else played the game. There's the Koskela brothers and Saga and Alex, who I just absolutely loved. There's so many great characters and moments in this game. Haley, do you have any standouts or any characters that you'd like to highlight?
I think it's fun to have Alan against these other characters because it really... Alan's not that good at what he does. That's kind of what's fun, is he's, in Alan Wake 1, he is this auteur, and he's quoting Stephen King in the first 2 seconds that you even hear him freaking talk, and he's a douchebag, he's kind of mean to his wife, whatever. And Alan has grown a lot since Alan Wake 1, right? That's kind of the point. He's gone through trials, whatever. But it's so fun, and I love that they're not like leaning into the stereotype of the hero will solo journey it through and power up and get out of here. He needs help. And even in the start of the game, like at one point Saga's like, do you need help? He's like, I can do it myself. You just need to focus on XYZ. And then by the end of the game, he's like, help me please. And then Saga comes in, and because of her super specific like background and powers and stuff, she's able to navigate the dark place in 20 minutes. And it's taken him 13 years. Like, that's so funny to me. And it's because they're just different people. And I think they take the time to make you not hate Alan, but kind of play on that thought of, yeah, Alan's not very good at this. That's why he's been here so long. That's why he struggles so hard. And that's why when you're Alan, it's harder to like figure out what's going on versus Saga, who's very pragmatic, has her little note board thing. I have problems with the board. I think it does some really stupid stuff when you're Saga sometimes. Like, it would stop me from progressing until I put a picture on the board sometimes, which is, I think, is so it does not feel like they made that decision. That feels like a different studio came in and made that one decision and ran away. But I just think it's so fun to have her next to Alan, and I was worried going into that people wouldn't like Saga because she's like the new girl coming in, like woman of color, here she comes, like some people could complain about that for dumb reasons.
Alan woke.
Alan woke. Literally, people wrote that over everything when they saw her. I was like, oh my god.
It only took us an hour and 11 minutes to finally hit that.
Yeah, you fucking dorks, shut up.
But she's perfect because she's a conduit for new players coming in who have no idea what's going on.
Yes.
So she can get explained to about what's going on. But once she gets that explanation, she's like, boop, and she just like uses her skills and her abilities to just surpass Alan in every way in navigating this space because she has these special abilities, but also because she's just like smart and she's good at what she does. So it's satisfying when she triumphs so quickly, and it's never something that's like a twist of the knife to Alan. She never goes like, Alan, you idiot, I did this in 2 seconds. She's just like a nice person and wants to help him. And it's so fun to see that against Alan, who's just like been drowning. And Alice too, like we get a little taste of Alice being quite good at navigating the dark place too. And it's fun to see those kind of instances next to him and been like, if it was just any other person here, would we even be having this conversation and this be a huge AWE event? Or is it because Alan is so bad at getting out of here that it's blown into this way bigger thing than it needed to be? That's a fun conversation to have.
Yeah. What if a non-dipshit was in a dark place instead?
They just got Thomas Zane and Alan Wake, and they're both kind of egotistical weirdo guys who are a bit too obsessed with themselves. And only when they get away from that concept will they start to ascend. Like Thomas Zane couldn't, so that's why he's a diver in the bottom of the bay, like having troubles with his, not able to do anything. Whereas Alan can only kind of start ascending when he reaches out for help. I think that there's almost like a weird underlying, really nice message about like men reaching out for help, like mental health help.
Yeah.
Like in a way, I don't know if that was intentional, but there's definitely like a subtext there of like, if you ask for help, and you reach out, like people who are with better skills could help you. You just need to do that, and then things will get easier. That's kind of a nice underlying message in this.
Yeah, most people want to help people that want help too. So like that's ultimately like I think that's a fine message for this game to be putting out there. That's great.
Yeah,
even
this
if they
game,
didn't mean to, I'll pretend that they did.
Yeah,
totally. Or and maybe they did intend for that, but some of those messages that are in this game they might even feel more powerful because they aren't so belabored, or they're not like written out for us so specifically.
They trust us.
Yeah, a trust in the player of their intelligence almost, which I think they do quite successfully in a lot of ways.
I like that trust too. I sometimes feel like things can get too handholdy, and I mean, maybe we can talk about it at the end, but I really hated the final draft change to the ending.
We can definitely talk about the end.
Hated it. I was so mad. I did not like it, but I like not knowing what's going on. Like I have a lot of fun when that's the concept of a piece of work. Like you're supposed to be confused. Don't worry. Just relax. It's okay. I've learned to relax and just like let that happen. I used to be very much like, no, I need to know the exact rules of what's happening and then I'll have fun. But now it's just like, what's going on? I don't care. Who's that? Thomas Zane. Okay. Like just being on for the ride made it a lot more a fun experience. And that's what they want you to do. Like I remember when I was playing Alan Wake 1, I was taking crazy notes. And the first line of Alan Wake 1 is something along the lines of, I'm butchering it, but the scariest things are the things we don't know. Like unanswered questions will always be scarier than the horrors that are described to us to our face. And that's like rung true for the entirety of the series. It's so much scarier to be confused about what's going on than to be like, here comes a monster. It's a 6 foot tall rabbit with blood on its mouth and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, that's kind of scary. But to be like, am I going to get out of here? I don't know. Who's that? How does this world work? Question mark, question mark, question mark. That's way more fun for me and scarier. And yeah, we'll talk about Final Draft, but I think they kind of robbed us of that nice feeling at the end of the Final Draft edits after that.
I'm right there with you with the not knowing. Like my favorite question to ask when I'm like playing a game or like watching a movie and I don't understand like exactly what's going on is to what end? So what is exactly the reason they're doing this and why? And like sometimes you don't get a satisfying answer to that. Like we'll never really fully know why they were doing tests on polar bears on the Lost Island, right? But it's interesting. That's interesting because you can speculate why? Like they were they have been testing weather anomalies? Like what for? What why were they there? What was was the full purpose of the Dharma Initiative too? Like what's going on? Like that type of stuff rocks, and this game is chock full of that stuff. I want to know why. I'm going to be very careful actually with Control spoilers. There's a lot of stuff in Control that I'm like, what was that? That was like, and why? Yeah. Like how old is the oldest house? Like what? Like who started it? There are documents in the game that date certain directors and things like that, but there's no real information about why it exists, who started it, when, and that stuff is so interesting. And I don't know if that's stuff that you need an answer to. I think that's like, it's fun to be out of the loop and that stuff because sometimes the answer can just be because it's magic, and that's not a good answer. That's a bad answer.
Yeah. And what's fun about Control too is like that then spurs people to have like weird philosophical questions about like even our reality and world and stuff. Like I've seen people have really interesting conversations about like Carl Jung philosophy, like the collective consciousness thoughts process behind how things come to being. And that was in Persona 5 too, right? Like remember that area where you go to in the basement of wherever you are and you're like in the collective thoughts of the community, and that's where you find certain demons. Like what does the community think is the worst thing in society? And that, that kind of rings true in Control. And I think if they answered like Control was built by XYZ and XY whatever, like, and they told us all this, it wouldn't let people lean into learning about those kind of philosophies, because the whole point of philosophy is you don't know, you're just kind of vibing with thoughts and like trying to figure stuff out and learn new things about people and humans.
And often well, no, go ahead.
No, and that's it. Like, and if you leave it open ended, it allows for way more interesting conversations.
So yeah, I was gonna say it's more interesting to not know, because when people start talking too about things like that in a story, the real answer will never be as satisfying to the people that have been thinking about it for years. You know what I mean? Like that's why nobody really actually likes, well, there are a lot of reasons that, the wrong people don't like Star Wars movies, but a Star Wars movie will never live up to what one of those guys thinks a Star Wars movie is, because they think of it as a truly a binary thing, that it's that it's this one type of thing when it doesn't have to be and actually isn't. But I think it's like, it's fun to not. I just think you're right. It is more fun to not know.
And some people don't vibe with that, which is fair, but then you probably won't like these games because that's what they're all about.
And not all games are for everybody. That's the other thing too.
Mm-hmm.
There's some other stuff in this game that I do want to shout out that I think is very interesting, that Sam Lake and presumably some of the other Finnish folks, Scandinavian folks on the team brought in, which was the mythology. Like, not just the Norse stuff that we get with the gods of Asgard and things like that, but like the specific like Finland mythology that you get, specifically I'm thinking of the one at the scary amusement park, the coffee world, the well that there's like, and then the water witch as well. All that stuff is like so interesting, and I just think that all this to say, I just think that the mythologies of other cultures are interesting, and the ones that we all sort of know, like the Norse and like Greek myths, those are good. I kind of want more stuff about the other ones. I think we know enough about Zeus, and we know enough about like Thor and things like that. I want to know about this fucking weird water witch. Where's the water witch movie? That's interesting. That's good stuff. That's scary.
And that's how you learn about like what those cultures appreciate or take for granted or need to learn from or whatever is those stories. I was playing a Highland song, and that hit me with a lot of Scottish mythology, which I feel like I never learned about either, even though my family's technically Scottish, like 5 generations ago. It's like, it's fun to learn that kind of stuff. I'm such a nerd for that. Like, oh yeah, exactly. Like, enough of Zeus and Hades and Loki and Thor. Like, I want those smaller European or like South American or African kind of country. Like, what is their lore like? Like, hit us up with more of that.
Totally. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh no, I was just gonna be like, it's like, it just rocks, because it's like, it also just adds like a personal touch to that. Like, I see this in the game, right, and I identify it as true, like actual mythology, not like lore for a video game. I was like, oh, this is real, and Sam Lake included this in the game because he thinks it's interesting, and I like that. I know a little bit more about Sam Lake. Like, I was like, oh, he wanted people to like think about this and have this as an idea. And the specific one about the well is interesting because I then sort of thought that one of the brothers was going to die before that was communicated.
Yes, because their names were the same as the past brother guys. I noticed that too.
But one of in the mythology, the brother kills the other brother. In the all stories are the same. It's the Cain and Abel of Finland, right? So the one brother kills the brother that does die in the game, but he didn't do that. It was actually Scratch.
Dang.
Which I liked that confusion of whether that was Scratch or Alan or not too, by the way.
Yeah.
That had me tripping for like 3 chapters. Like, was that Alan? I don't know. Like trying to figure that out. It was another feeling where I was like, I don't know what's going on. I'll just keep going. Like, I hope it's Alan.
Now we know. Fun. Now we know that if you see teeth, it's Scratch. If he
looks cooler,
it's
Scratch. If he's got a leather jacket and he looks a little bit cooler, it's Scratch.
Yeah, he looks like he might hurt you, but you still want to hang out with him. Scratch. For
yeah,
sure.
Like, I don't want to stay out too late with this guy, but he seems all right.
Yeah,
I'll talk to him after. I'll have one beer with this guy. One.
Matt, something you shared about that last point was like how the inclusion of like, you know, this mythology from a different culture adds to that personal touch, which just feels something I think we keep spiraling back to throughout this game. Yeah, how about that? Is just the personal touches throughout and the different ways that they do that, and how they're so intentional. Could even go back to that discussion of like the things they were personally limited by in the making of this game. Haley, I feel like there's plenty more I still want to talk about. There's a couple mechanics I really want to talk about at a certain point, but I think, Haley, you were going to talk about Final Draft a little bit.
Yeah.
So I wanted to leave a little space for that because you had mentioned to me that you were disappointed, and I watched it too. And I also was like, oh, I kind of wish I wouldn't have watched for my own personal canon. But what did you have to say about it?
So Final Draft is it's a new game plus. I always by mistake say new show plus because of MinnMax.
Yeah.
That happens every week. I always do that. It's new game plus, and I like the concept. I think it's fun that it's like it's an edit of the story because we're on another spiral. Like we're just going through again. That's really fun. That makes total sense. I just don't like where it ended up because like what we were just saying over and over is this type of media excels at leaving things open-ended and then invites player thought, player philosophical contemplation. It leaves space for the player to think about things and to anticipate the next game even. And, it's not the end of the world to know, like essentially at the end of this. So at the end of the original ending, for players who don't know, Saga kills Scratch. That's done. Like potentially we could figure out whether she is out of the dark place or not. So she picks up her phone and she tries to call her daughter, who everyone's told her to this point is dead. But that was just like, she thinks the narrative telling her that her daughter didn't actually die. So in the original ending, we got her just hearing the phone ring a few times and then it cuts to black and we don't actually learn whether or not her daughter picks up. And then in the new ending, her daughter picks up and is like, "Mom, I had a nightmare." And she's like, "I'll be home soon, honey." And then like, it kind of is like a nice little wrap on a bow sort of thing. And I was like, oh, that's like the opposite of what I want. And I saw a lot of people like it because they like those and they like finalizations and they like knowing something and that's it. But I don't know, like the whole appeal of Alan Wake to me is that as soon as you get answered a question, they ask another more interesting question. So then you like don't even really care, you just got an answer. You're like already looking forward to the next interesting thing, which is like what Twin Peaks does too. And I just think they did technically give us an answer, but that was like a really big answer. Like that's the whole point of that first game, is trying to get out of the dark place. And for her to pick up and confirm that with like a factual statement, like I am alive and I am here. It was a bit too confirmy for me.
Yeah.
And took me out of it, if anything. But then I saw other people say, yippee, I like this. Now I feel more grounded and it feels more like a finalized experience for me. Just with them having DLC coming out soon, I don't know, maybe the DLC will start with the phone cutting out and then her daughter, he tries to call again, her daughter doesn't pick up and she's actually gone again. Who knows? Like they could take it any direction.
Yeah.
I liked it more open-ended and I was more excited for that than the more period at the end of a sentence ending that the Final Draft did.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you too. I think at first when I even just finished the game, not the Final Draft ending because I just watched the video, I kept expecting an additional twist at the very end.
Yeah.
But the things had not fully wrapped up, but wrapped up in a sense of a way that I was that it all felt like it tracked for me, leaving enough open-ended for the continuation of this story. My hope is that, like, it's a misdirect, that Final Draft ending. And
I'm hoping that too.
It's a false sense of, like, comfort for Saga / the player who likes to know. Yeah, because that, like you said, it sort of, I don't know, it kind of flies in the face of of sort of the strength almost.
Well, like the whole Alan Wake 1 ended with one of the most iconic lines in video games ever is like, it's not a lake, it's an ocean. And that made everyone go, what? Like I remember when I played it, I was like, what does that even mean? But that's the fun. It's like, I don't know. Like Alan had a realization and I need to come to terms with, I don't really understand it completely because I'm not in the dark place. I'm just listening to a dude who's in the dark place trying to figure it out himself. And that made it more fun going into Alan Wake 2 because now it's like, how's the ocean been? What did you mean by that? Going into that with that thought of like, I'm still excited about the mystery. There's something new to figure out. But I don't know. In this world they've crafted, there's always going to be something new to figure out. I just really liked that question mark. And they took it away from me. They made it a period.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, did you have anything you were gonna say about that?
Yeah, because I watched that ending too, and it didn't. I was just kind of like, okay, like, sorry.
You're all good.
I didn't care about that. Like in the same way that like Haley was saying, I was just sort of like, oh, I like not knowing. Like, I wonder if this is like. I wonder if this is even true. Like, they're showing it to me, and I see it. I didn't play it. I watched it on YouTube. But I was sort of like, could this also just be a spiral? Like, could you actually get to in the way that I understand, pardon me, the multiverse?
The RCU.
The RCU. If the way I understand these things, in like a Marvel like end game sort of way. If there's a reality where they lose all the time but once, is this a reality where is this a loop? Is this a spiral where she did succeed but not in the right way, kind of? Like, is there a consequence to this, to the way they've done it this time, so that, yes, she got what she wanted, but at what cost, right? Like, so I wonder if this is just yet another loop, or if it's like, or if it is just, nope, this is the end of it, and that's done, and then there will be some other evil or will present itself in some interesting way. I have faith that while that isn't satisfying, what is presented to us now, I have faith based on their track record that whatever the next thing will be will rectify my mild disappointment in that. Right?
You trust them.
I trust them. And, you know, as I said earlier, Alan Wake is my God. And I will, I'll pray at the altar of Alan Wake.
I'd like to think that is the case as well, Matt. And I'm very hopeful and optimistic, honestly, that, you know, knowing what we know about them and how they've handled themselves, you know, with this series of stories, I would be very surprised if that weren't the case. One thing I want to highlight, a couple of those things I keep teasing out, just like mechanics and elements of the game that I really enjoy, and I'd love to hear what you two think. And if there are any that come up for you as well, feel free to share. The first thing that like I absolutely adored about this game, which I know not everybody else liked, was Alan's scene changing mechanics that he had, and how that sort of worked within puzzling out the levels. As confused as I was in the subway area, and the first time I had to use one of the new like echo events on the plot board in order to change a scene, I was confused. But once I figured that out, I was so intrigued about how they were doing that. And I don't know if I've seen, you see like light world, dark world stuff in games.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I've seen like the way this being sort of made available to the player as like a tool to change like how the layout is and what's going on. I just really liked that. What did you two like that? Were you like,
I liked it. I thought it was interesting, and then there were certain points where I thought it was going to do something else and then it didn't, and that maybe I was just like getting too excited about how awesome they were being at their meta-narrative stuff that I started thinking they were going to make it even bigger. But the one that stuck out to me thinking of that weird disappointment was when he is in the play theater, and then the play actually ended up being like real theater, and they killed the audience.
Yes.
And they were like part of the play. Like that's again, like the blending of media, like the closest thing a video game has with interactivity is like people who can interact with a live action play, I think is kind of what they were thinking about. Like, what's the closest thing to a video game? That. So it's like interactivity and how that blends together two different types of media. I was like, oh, cool. So I thought that was going to be a thing where you could switch between the scenes and essentially like be in that moment and learn more about that interactivity, or it maybe not even use that concept of the switching of the scenes, but be present during that moment when that was occurring, because I think that would have been a really good like mirroring of what they were doing with gameplay versus reading versus TV versus movies, blah blah blah, is like a play in the audience, because that's what we are. It's like we're the audience there and we're watching a play, but we get but then the interactivity is the fun thing, is like, come up on stage, come here, you're changing this now, like you're part of this now, and that kind of feels like what they were trying to do. But instead it was just like an echo and something that you get to think about posthumously. I was like, oh, I wish that was a scene in the game, because that would have just been so perfect to slot in there and be an element of the game, is like fighting your way out of the interactive play. Like they're trying to call you up on stage to kill you or something, and you, the player, have to get away. I just think that'd have been so cool. And the fact that it was just an echo made me kind of feel that it was like a taste and I got robbed of something that could have been really cool, maybe.
Yeah, maybe they left honestly, I hadn't thought about it this way until you mentioned it, but there could be some meat left on that bone as far as like what they could do with this type of mechanic if they do take this forward into a possible, a future Alan Wake or what have you. Yeah, that is something that would have been really cool.
And that's not fair for me to do, because that's just me coming up with an idea and wishing it was in the game. But I wouldn't have thought that if it hadn't have been an echo system that made me see the chairs in the audience, see the corpses, or see the blood all over the floor after they got massacred because the actors came down and killed them. That just made me go, oh, I don't want to hear about this after the fact. I want to see this. This would be so cool.
This is just obviously speculation, and I don't mean to make an excuse, but I'm wondering if this is like, oh, this is a way we can, introduce these story elements and divvy out more of the moments of what have happened without, like, within limitations of like, well, it's going to be easier for us to just hear this.
Budget. I can't do everything.
Now that I think about it, but I also think it's fair for you to be like, hey, this would also be cool if this is a part
maybe
of it.
That was on their plot board and they just didn't have. They just they have crunch too. I'm sure they're trying to get this thing out the door. It's fair enough. Maybe in a perfect world they had enough time. They gave me enough other stuff. I'm satiated. I just couldn't help but think like, that would have been perfect if they included that.
Yes. One other thing, unless Matt, did you have anything you wanted to say about that? Because I have one more thing I wanted to talk about.
The only thing about the story, the storyboard elements that I wished it was. I wished that they had more of a because there were some puzzles tied to it, and also the light puzzles were there too. I thought they were too. They're all just kind of the same. The one that is like really great, the one section where you have to do all that stuff is in the train section. I think is the best utilization of that, those mechanics. But the other ones, I kind of felt like I was like, okay, I'm just going over here. Oh, I have a new idea. Put it here. Okay, I'm getting this thing that I need or whatever, or getting this information, this thought. And now I have to go back over here and think about this over there, and it was kind of they all kind of just were a little too similar, but but I didn't mind it either, because honestly, if they were all different, they would have been scarier to me. At least they were similar enough that I was like, okay, I kind of know what the deal is.
Yeah.
There was the one at the theater that really scared me was when you took the light away and then put it back, and then there was an enemy shadow there or something. Behind the projector or whatever it was, didn't care for that. Also, we lightly talked about this, I think, but these jump scares, too many and too scary.
There's
totally.
The Cynthia chapter, man, that was
the Cynthia chapter.
There was a jump scare every 5.5 minutes. That entire 2.5 hour segment.
Yes.
And that's a trope that like it's just gonna work every time. Like scary old lady is like top of the scary things, and it sucks. And it's like
Scary
maybe dated
barefoot
and
lady.
bad. Yes, it's put some shoes on and then calm down. Also, but like when you go approach her at the window and she's like normal and then she disappears, I was like, this game is fucked. This is so.
Oh my god! And that was the first one that because I was in such a relaxed state. You're in an old folks' home, for God's sakes. Like, should this not be the safest? There's the little things on each staircase to lift people up. Like, there's nothing scary here. And you go to talk to her, and she's like, "I can't find my lamp." And you're like, "It's okay." And then they just hit you with that one right. Properly was so scared, and my heart hurt, and that led me into the rest of that section where I was just like, this is hell, but I also kind of love it.
Oh yeah, like
time.
it's ultimately like I don't like feeling scared, but it is also fun to be scared.
It's adrenaline
like
rush,
it's great. I was playing this game a lot with headphones on too, and
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
I was too.
a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. And all my fiance would hear me shouting is where, because I would just like hear something and not know exactly where it was until I saw it.
Yes.
And I know, Connor, you were about to say something too, but one of the other scarier things in the game, one of the types of enemies, because you have the ones that can zip around, right? You see the shadows that you shine the light on and they become a guy. And like that's
Are you
like
talk about the puddle ones? The flipped upside down lady puddle things.
What the hell is that? That is
so
so
scary
fucked up.
looking.
Because like I'm used to, I played Silent Hill 2 a couple years ago, and I hadn't played it before. And in that game, there is a type of enemy that is legs on top, legs on bottom.
Yes.
And you're sort of like, this is scary and gross, but it's kind of like it looks a little silly. Legs, upper torso, puddle. And then sort of like a shimmery bottom upper torso as well.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
So scary, both screaming, awful. One of the worst things I've ever seen in a video game. Maybe up there with the hands from Elden Ring. Just the hands. The hands that crawl around like spiders.
Don't need
God.
those.
Don't need that. They have like 7 fingers too. They're horrible. They're absolutely horrible to see. But those ones, those were bad, and I didn't like that, because if they were like the ones that are blurry, that's enough.
Yeah.
If someone comes up to you and they're blurry, but nothing else is, that's scary.
That's already frightening.
That's already pretty scary. These puddle ones, no.
I think the first time you even see one of these things is when you're exploring sort of like the hospital wing, like of the old
The like
folks'
exercise
home.
area
Yes.
with the medicine balls and shit.
Yeah.
It's burned in my memory.
That got me so bad. And then when you dispatch one of these things, when the person falls over, it's just a regular looking person with like
Yeah.
And that was like, that's disturbing me too.
I can only liken them to, in The Last of Us 2, the stalkers.
Oh.
Those are the worst ones to me, because anything that's kind of like this
Yes.
is bad. That's bad. That sucks. I hate that. These are as scary as those things to me.
The first time in The Last of Us Part 2 where you turn around and it slunks really quick and you're like,
No, thank you.
Because that's what you see in your peripheral, like in your apartment when you're turning off all your lights or whatever. There's such a primal, intense fear of a slunker, slunking around.
I felt safe to share that because I know I'm not alone. That's scary. Those are so scary.
That's one of the scariest. It's not even scream inducing. It's like your gut. You start getting that adrenaline rush to help you survive feeling, because your body thinks you're in danger kind of level.
For me, it's I wish I hadn't seen that and you had just killed me instead. I wish.
Yeah.
Alan Saga just falls over. So many points in this game where my body physically reacted to being scared, just like jolting. The worst of which, like when it happened, I was like, that was the worst one for me. It's right at the end of the game when you are Saga working on your plot board at the very end, and you're in, your mind place,
This didn't happen to me.
You didn't have this one.
This is circumstantial. Leo, this happened to Leo, but not if I'm thinking of it. Finish your thought.
Oh, it's the one when you're in the mind place, and I think I turned around after doing a specific plot thing, and there was just a shadow.
Yeah.
That I think it moved and then was gone.
Yeah.
Absolutely freaked me out.
Because I never turned around.
Huge. Turns out that's all you had to do is not turn around.
Leo brought that up on the deepest dive. He's like, that was the worst one, right? And none of us had turned around. Like, we had whatever timestamp there is, we had done the next thing that pushed that timestamp away.
Okay.
And so we never turned around to look back at the room, but he had, and so it was kind of funny because it was almost sounded like we were gaslighting him. We're like, there was no guy in that room. He's like, it was the scariest moment of the entire game. We're like, no, there's nothing there. But it's just because, which is so fun that it's optional, because that's even scarier.
Yeah.
I could have just missed it.
I don't want to derail this too much, but have either of you ever played PT? Do you know about PT?
I do know about it.
So
I've never played it though.
So I did play it, and my friend sort of told me to download it as a joke, and was like, download it. It's a fun little interesting weird game. And I played it and was like, that is the most scared I've ever been, maybe ever. And I've watched a lot of videos about PT and stuff, and those types of videos where somebody will manipulate the video game, the camera, and see what's beyond the camera.
Oh, sure, yeah.
In PT, something is always following you. And if you turn around, it's not there. And if you, it's just always behind your player character. So you can turn around and they're still behind you. And it's the most fucked up thing
awful
ever. It sucks.
What a horrifying concept.
Yeah. It's in the same way that in Silent Hill 2, when James is looking in the mirror, his reflection is looking straight at you. And it's this sucks. These sickos, these absolute sickos that come up with horror. How dare you try to scare me?
Just and making us walk through the game and survive is just what makes it worse. And I think for me too, that the reason that was the scariest part was because throughout most of the game, my guardrails are up, and I'm ready for something. Even if I get scared by it, I at least half anticipated it. Yeah. And that one, I was just safe saga, or so I thought, and then it was just awful.
That's why it got me, 'cause I feel like I've been trained to anticipate via movies, right? Because movies can't really get away as much with the blah, because then it just feels really cheap and not very cinematic. So it's always the slow burn, and then the music leads you up to it, and then you turn a corner, it's and then you get scared.
Yes.
But this game was, and I get that there's a narrative reason for that. It's Scratch/Cynthia scaring you at any given point, and that's how he scares Alan. So of course that's how he scares us because we're playing Alan. But God, those hurt. My heart hurt at the end of that. And I played that all in one sitting, on stream too.
My.
So normally I'd take a little break if I was feeling a bit too overwhelmed, but I just kept getting scared. And I was like, I just have to keep playing because, you can't stop.
You're so brave for streaming that. I would not have put myself out
I didn't
there.
know it was going to happen. It was funny because Sarah Pozorski was in my chat then, and she was just like, oh, I'm here at the perfect time. I was like, I'm in an old folks home. What do you mean? This is the most boring. So far, this is the most boring level so far. She's like, it's okay, you'll have fun. And then it was 2 hours of nonstop jump scares. But at the end of the day, looking back at it, I think of it fondly because it was low key kind of fun.
It's kind of the best. It's one of the best sections of the game, though it is so scary.
In
There's
the
a lot of
moment,
ground
I was
to cover.
kind of pissed, but now I'm like, that was kind of fun. It's the further you get from childbirth, you're like, that wasn't too bad.
That's all right.
In reality, you had a horrible time.
I think people have been saying the old folks home part in Alan Wake 2 is pretty much the childbirth of video games.
I've been saying it. I've been saying it.
Yeah. Oh, that was you, not just someone.
Yeah, and I don't have anything I don't have any experience to base it on.
I don't either. It still sounds pretty bad.
Everyone's getting mad at me when I say it, but
Yeah, I can see all of the mothers in chat are just losing their minds.
Mothers
I've been
who
saying-
played Alan Wake 2. Is it
Yes.
the same? Do you think it was the same?
I think so. Yeah. Let us know. Just let us know. And
Please.
drop a pic of those sweet little babies too. I'm only interested in fresh ones. Don't show me your grown kid. I don't need to see an adult. I don't need to see a picture. I don't need to see a picture of Connor. Show me a fresh baby.
I gotta say, I did not expect us to getting to the fresh baby request part of the podcast. There's just in the attempt to actually get us out of here kind of soon. I'm already like lamenting in my brain how much we're not going to be able to talk about today in this game, or in this episode, which I guess is honestly just makes for a great ad for people to go listen or watch The Deepest Dive, Haley, because that is so. Well, it was amazing, but it's also so detailed and will give all the moments and the aspects of this game the time that they deserve. One more thing that I wanted to point out, and I want to open it to you two as well to share whatever you want about this game. Just to highlight, I don't think we've talked about the profiling part of Saga's abilities. Even though there's not necessarily what I would describe as like a dynamic mechanic, something that's like really fascinating about the mechanic. I still loved the way that it worked narratively, of her being able to, essentially just like dig deeper into someone's mind and find the answers to questions she has. I thought this was so fun, and they did a great job of mixing, back to the mixed media of when she is sort of profiling someone, seeing them up most of the time, even if they're not talking, you are seeing them sort of narrate what they're saying to her. What did you think about this, Haley?
I wasn't the biggest fan of it. Like, it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
There were certain points where it really bothered me. Like I was saying, like there was that point when you're going through and trying to get all the pieces for the float. But
yes,
and so it was like, try to find a laugh track or something. And I was like, oh, I remember when that coffee cup cutout laughed at me. I'll go over there. So I ran over there, and then it didn't let me interact with it. So I was like, that's weird. Like, this is definitely it. And what the game was doing was, I need to put the picture of the coffee cup on a wall, and then when I went back, it let me hit X and interact. Which is like, that's just like, I didn't like that. That was like one of the only complaints I had with this game was, I think that it was a big mistake to have interactability be a roadblock to interacting with the detective board.
Yes.
But then at the very end, I like completely fell in love with it when it just became when Saga was in the dark place and she was using the board to profile herself, which also what a genius idea. I didn't even think about that, but like, she of course would be the perfect person in the dark place to get out, because even if she has memory loss, she can interrogate herself and get the information out. That's so freaking smart. So like, I loved that was the element that they played with to get her out of the dark place so fast. And I also just kind of love that it was just cognitive behavioral therapy, which we talked about in The Deepest Dive. Like, I don't know if either of you have experienced that, but like, I've been to therapy and I've had cognitive behavioral therapy, like done, like I've worked on it with a therapist. And when that was happening, I was like, this is what I learned with my therapist. Like, this is so fun. Is like taking a thought, thinking the thought through, why, not just like, what does that thought mean, but why are you thinking it, and then deconstructing it and taking positives from that and building it up. And it was like weirdly fun, and maybe lends into my like own canon in my head that they wrote this game to be about mental health awareness for like even men, especially because men, like all the men in this world seem to have the biggest trouble with navigating the dark place, except for Mr. Door, but he's like magic, so I guess that doesn't count. But just like, if you're able to approach these negative thoughts with these type of strategies, you'll feel better, and then you can get out of the dark thoughts. Like, that's a very nice thing, and it worked with the detective board flawlessly. I was like, that's perfect. Like, that one type where you're putting the same picture down over and over. It's like, you're stupid. I can't remember exactly what it was, but she was like, you're stupid. You're stupid.
You're a bad detective.
I think it's Logan's face.
Yes, it's just, you're a bad mom. You're a bad mom. You're a bad mom. You're a bad mom, and you're putting it down over and over and over again. And then once she's able to get past that thought, she has to like burn away the darkness to get the positive thought, and then it completely supersedes and replaces the negative chain. I was like, that's what a perfect metaphor and like visual representation of that kind of thought process and how that actually is effective and does actually work. It's not just a funny thing to think about. It literally you can train your brain to stop being negative and destructive if you do these things often enough to teach your brain that thing. I was like, that's so great. I thought it really worked then. But I still think about when it was really clunky. So it was kind of a little too clunky, and then I loved it immediately at the end when they did with it there.
Yeah, maybe unlike some of the things that they execute on in this game, that one could have used, like, there just could have maybe been another pass on the clunkiness. Like, I had a similar thing happen in the game where I like knew the solution to a saga puzzle or a story moment, and the game also sort of put up a roadblock of, well, you didn't put that thing on the board, or you haven't interrogated this person yet, or what have you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's like the antithesis of what they're trying to do, because I'm supposed to be Saga, and if I think it through, Saga should just agree with me because like we're the same person. But to make it so I thought it through, but not Saga yet, like completely felt disjointed and like the opposite of what they were trying to do throughout the whole rest of the game. So I don't know why they made that creative choice. I thought it was a really, honestly, like probably the only bad one I really didn't agree with, besides the edit ending at the end.
Yeah, I wonder if they got some feedback on that, if they would have considered differently, but who's to say? And I want to open it to you two now, for like, not to make us be like, not final thoughts necessarily, but if there's something about this game that we haven't shared yet that you're really feeling called to. Matt, maybe I'll start with you, whether it's like an aspect or a moment. What do you want to highlight? I mean,
I like that these games have a dense lore, a dense connected shared universe, but it is not mandatory, right? Like, you don't have to really engage with control to get or understand that the FBC is a weird like government like entity, like you don't have to like that. It doesn't affect your knowledge or your enjoyment of the game at all. It doesn't. You don't have to have played Quantum Break to enjoy what happens with Detective Tim Breaker, right?
Tim E. Breaker.
Yeah, Tim E. Breaker.
Gosh,
it's
that's
funny.
Nuts.
Yeah, like that stuff. I like that. But to your point about the case board. Also, there was just like stuff that I just didn't interact with. There were all these puzzles, these well, I'll go back to my thought about the case board in a second, but I didn't really interact with the
puzzles like out in the world with the dolls.
Yeah, I did one of those and was like, I can't even believe I figured this out. This was inscrutable to me. Because I'm just like, I like puzzles, but I like puzzles that are like something specific shaped fits here.
Oh, sure.
And I'll be like, I found this weird shaped thing. Let me put like Resident Evil 4 puzzles.
Evil. Yeah. Yes, I was just thinking like slide in the thing and it goes shh, and then you can walk in. Yeah.
But like the puzzle, I liked the puzzles in this game that were make a door appear, right? Or like make that type of stuff. Play with the light to get a different path. That stuff was good. And I did some of the cult stashes.
Yes.
Those puzzles where you have to figure out like a combination.
I was doing like math equations that I haven't used math like that in years, and I had like a notepad out, and I was like, I'm not looking it up.
Yeah, once we start getting math in here, your boy's checking out.
Me too.
But so that stuff I didn't really interact with. But back to the case board.
Yeah.
I thought that I did something wrong because I had a couple of for later. When you have clues that you haven't quite figured out what to do with yet, they're marked for later, and they always appear
Oh yeah.
Like they always repopulate as like a new item basically in your stash, and that would annoy me. But I found out that some of them were bugged. I like looked into this, and so like if a lot of the ones that I had, I don't think were like extra like bonus things. They were story. So like I interacted with the complete story of the game, but I think, and I talked to every NPC that I could. Mm-hmm. But the exact same ones that I had left over were the ones that I saw in this post where everybody was like, "Oh, this is bugged," and I was like, "Okay, so I'm not as bad of a detective as Saga's brain was telling her. It's the game's fault." But that's games now, right? Like no game has come out, maybe not since Hades. No game has come out and has been perfect, like from the drop date. Obviously, Hades was in early access for a long time, but it's just like games come with a day one patch all the time. Mm-hmm. So hopefully they fix that, because I would like to do a second run. I would love to do a new the final draft, and maybe just hold circle to skip the cinematic. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I just, in my heart of hearts, didn't get to bring up. I think I got it. I do think obviously it plays way better than Alan Wake 1, which doesn't play terribly.
Yeah.
They feel so different to me, like they're different game styles.
Yeah.
At least the combat.
Oh, I also never threw one of those like propane tanks that you can find.
Those
I got
sucked.
one of the. I was like, this is a worthless item to me. This is never go. And while the crossbow had a good amount of power, it was never worth it to me to keep in my inventory.
I leveled that sucker up. I was using that a lot.
I was like, this just takes too long. And they make a big to-do out of, don't be in the Mind Palace out in the world, because it's not actually, it doesn't pause the game. It's just you're in your Mind Palace, but you're still present in the world. You can still get got. That was never an issue to me. I never once got in the Mind Palace in a spot where I shouldn't have. I was always like,
that didn't happen to me either,
safe.
actually.
Yeah. I was like, why'd they make it seem like this could happen to me all the time? It just didn't.
That's so funny. Like, I think I had at least 3 instances where I was like, okay, I think I'm far enough away from anything, go in the Mind Palace, and then something would knock me out of it, basically.
Oh.
Yeah. You guys are probably just better at where you went to the Mind Palace than me just being reckless out in the woods when I know there's a cultist or something around.
Yeah. I was very quick to hit the pause button in those sections.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm not some fucking idiot like Connor. I'll get it.
Thankfully, you're not. Haley, how about you? Is there anything that you're like desperate to touch on with this game that we haven't really highlighted?
It's really just the meta narrative stuff for me. I just think they do that so masterfully. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I have a flex that Sam Lake retweeted my tweet the other week.
Okay, go off.
Excited.
Go off.
Well, my partner got me House of Leaves for Christmas, which is apparently a book that's really highly inspired the meta narrative direction that the game that the studio takes with its games. It's super cool. I'm only a third of the way through it still. Like, I just have had a lot of stuff going on, so I haven't been able to finish it, but I read a ton of it over Christmas. Y'all read that book. It's super good. If you like this stuff, it's that, but a book. And you'll be turning the book upside down. Sometimes you'll turn the page and it's just like boxes of text. So you don't know what one to read first. You have to like take a beat and be like, how do I read this? And it's just the most interesting book I've read in a long time. But House of Leaves, big recommendation there. I'm not even done it yet, but I already know I'm gonna love it. Just kind of like how I did with Alan Wake. But I posted that I was reading it and I was really excited because I loved Remedy's mid-narrative stuff this past year. And then the first one to like it was like a sort of a smaller person at Remedy, like one of the sub game directors or something like that. So I think that put it on his feed, and then he saw it and retweeted it, and I was like screaming. I was like, Sam, I just retweeted my tweet.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
And then, like, you know, it got a ton of likes because it's Sam Lake and it's something to do with Alan Wake. So, but he has actually someone in the MinnMax community sent me a screenshot of like all the books he has on his desk because he tweeted that one time. And it's like a personal goal of mine to like maybe make a note, and whenever I feel like buying a new book, maybe buy one of those books, because I bet those are all very up my alley kind of thing. But yeah, it has me pursuing other types of media that I don't think I'd otherwise have engaged with, just because I fell in love with this so much. Like, I started watching Twin Peaks, I'm reading House of Leaves, and I think even if I start to learn about other things that were inspired by Twin Peaks or Alan Wake or something, I'd be a nerd for it too, just because it kind of opened up my eyes to this type of storytelling that I think is really cool. And I really am excited for Control 2, which is going to be their next game. So, I cannot wait. Just to get the Control gameplay plus all they learned with their amazing storytelling with Alan Wake 2. It's I can't see that game not being a 10 out of 10 for me right away, unless they completely fumble the ball or something. You know, I'm so excited to see what they do with it.
I can't wait for Control 2 because it'll be the first Remedy game that I'll get to play at launch. I missed Alan Wake 2 by like, you know, a month or, you know,
Close
2 months
enough.
or whatever. Yeah, but I like to be on the hype train when it hits the station. I'm ready. I'm so excited.
And then the DLCs this year too. Those will be fun. I'm excited to see who. I could see them going with like Tim's perspective in the Dark Place maybe for a DLC. That'd be kind of cool.
I love that.
Mr. Door maybe, but I don't know if they give us a new perspective of a character we've already seen, or if they're gonna force us to be Alan or Saga. But it would. Aren't they doing? Is it 2 DLCs coming out this coming year?
2.
Yeah, one of them is what is the name of the show? The
Night Springs.
Night Springs.
So that's going to be the Alan Wake one.
Yeah.
It's going to be some attempt for him to escape the Dark Place via Night Springs episode or something cool, I bet. And I would imagine the second one's probably from Saga's perspective, doing something there. But you know, I'm excited to see what they do, especially after the last draft ending. I want them, like you were saying, Matt, to come back and be like, just kidding, she's dead,
Psych.
haha.
Yeah.
And like keep going. And I'm like, yay, Logan's dead. That's a weird thing to be excited about. But just still in the Dark Place, still trying to figure things out.
It.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot more. I mean, like, that I would love to just talk about with this game. You know, things I enjoyed, the way I was playing it. But I think what my sort of final thoughts are that it has me thinking about narrative differently, and that's kind of the most exciting thing about that to me, and just how games have an opportunity by, you know, making us the player, us being the people who like push through the story in certain ways. They have the opportunity to do something really cool, and I feel like Remedy is absolutely doing that. And it now has my attention not just on what Remedy's doing, but also other creators, and like, where's the creativity, or like seeking out creativity in games, as opposed to a lot of the stuff. That's not to say that like something down the barrel game wise isn't something that I would totally still enjoy.
Oh yeah.
I'm playing games like that right now. But
I replay old Far Cries and, you know, Assassin's Creeds and all those basic, just, you know, go here, get the stuff, do the thing, shoot the guy. Like, that's fine.
Yeah. Resident Evil 4 remake last year, I was like, this is just a video game. This is just a great video game.
Just a very, very good video game.
Yeah. It's like, this is exactly what you want a video game to be. It rocks.
And that's why I love games. It's like how my love for games started, but it's stuff like this that gets me even more excited. And I'm so glad that I heard Haley talking about it in the first place, and that I followed that intrigue to this series. And now you two have me so excited to play Control and Quantum Break, which I didn't even know existed till after I finished Alan Wake 2.
Mm-hmm.
I've never played Quantum Break either, which unfortunately they don't own the rights to that IP yet, or they don't own the rights to that IP anymore either. Same with Max Payne, hence why they can't be blatant about like Tim and who Tim is. But you know, still fun though.
Yeah, they're making it work, just having to dance around it a little bit. But yeah, I keep reiterating this point. There's a lot more that I could probably talk about this game, thoughts that I had as I played it, but it, to me, was just masterful, and I was so excited about it, and I loved it, and it's just vaulted its way to, like, some of my favorite games I've ever played.
Exciting.
On our way out, folks, before we do plugs, I know I kind of asked you too if you had anything else that you wanted to say. Did either of you have a thought you wanted to wrap up or like a final thought? And if not,
You
that's
want us
okay
to
too.
do Lake and Ocean line?
I was hoping for that. I did have I think the live notification for this stream, because we're streaming this live on my Twitch channel. It's something stupid like, it's not a podcast, it's a bigger podcast. Yeah. Just the stupidest thing I could think of. But yeah, did either of you two have a final thought you wanted to share, just like just how you felt about this game, or did you get to do it?
You know, I think it's this run, this control into Alan Wake 2, like the quality. I just want to celebrate the quality. That is like, you know, like I played Control late. So I think if I had played Control the year it came out, it could have possibly been my game of the year that year. Mm-hmm. Like it's great. If I had finished Alan Wake 2 in the calendar year 2023, I might have given it up. But I gave it to a game that I didn't finish, which was Baldur's Gate 3. Because come on, but it's like they're just operating at a level that I think is so interesting and like inspiring. Like it's really really cool, and all that to say too, none of the game, like every element of the game, visually, the story, the gameplay, the like even just like the sound design.
Gosh, or the music between chapters, like
every song is a banger.
Yeah,
the bangers. I love that stuff, and I just love that. I think Haley said it best, which was that Sam Lake's having fun, and like that just goes so far in everything. You're gonna just enjoy something more if the people making it and the people in charge are having a good time. If everybody's miserable, it might still be good, but you're not gonna like it as much. Because a lot of great games come out all the time where everybody hates working on it.
Yeah.
But when people are having fun and are making interesting choices, that's, I think, often a recipe for success. And I think I'm just excited for more. I just can't wait for the DLC, and I'll every week refresh the Fortnite store in hopes that they bring back the Alan Wake skin.
You can play him in Dead by Daylight on the 30th.
That's just too scary for me. I think I need the baby version, the one that's for babies, Fortnite.
Dead by Daylight's scary until you realize that everyone in that game is just annoying, and then it just becomes an annoying game to play. But I still love it.
I should download it and mess with it. I never really have given it
I love
a shot.
that game. I love that game.
Matt, thanks for sort of wrapping up your thoughts too. Haley, last opportunity as well for you if you haven't gotten to wrap something up.
It's kind of just echoing what I've already said, but I think it's not like this game is groundbreaking and now games are different or anything, but it has really shifted my thought on what the next stage of games could be, because, we're talking about a time where games have only been a thing for 30 years. Like we're truly in the start of this media that think about in the next 700 years. Like sometimes we don't stop and think about things that way. It's like, what are they going to think about the games we made right now? Are they going to look like stick figure cave paintings next to the interactivity and interesting things that those games in the future will be doing? It's just such an interesting thing to think about. And I think what this, in particular, with that kind of weird background thought in mind, I think this game is very good at not just taking story, world, and play, which are the three building blocks of a good game. It's finding a decent balance between those three things. Maybe some games favor play more than story or world or whatever, but it's always a combination of those. They take that combo, but then they also say, but what about a book or a movie or a TV show? And then they kind of bleed those things, and what makes a book, the reader and the words, okay, bleed that into the concept of what's a movie, the watcher and the film, okay, and then they bleeding that into interactivity in this multifaceted, insane way that I think that looking back in the future, that could be, of the thousands and thousands and thousands of games that are going to come out in the interim, one that they point to is like, look, they were starting to get it. Look how look at the ways that they were playing with interactivity between multiple different types of media. They were kind of starting to get it there. I truly think it's going to be one of those games that sticks out a bit, or at least is chatted about posthumously when the future human race is thinking about games in the past, kind of thing.
Yes, I like how forward thinking you are, Haley. And then, of course, those people, because they will be talking about it, are going to listen to this podcast, and they're going to be like, wow, she called it.
And I'll be dead for 600 something years.
Yeah, I'll probably be 700 years old, but that's,
you're
sorry
like an
about
elf or
that.
something?
Yeah, I'm sort of an immortal elf.
I should have led with that when I introduced you as we hopped on.
Yeah.
Folks, that will do it for our co-op episode 43, all about Alan Wake 2. Again, thank you to everybody who's listening to this, whether you're listening as a supporter on Patreon or you're watching this on YouTube or listening to this in a free feed some years down the road in audio format. On our way out today, I want to give my guests a chance to plug some stuff. First of all, thank you both so much for taking the time to do this. I really had so much fun and could have gone on for a lot longer if we needed to.
What a hoot.
Matthew, my brother, on
Connor.
your way out, what would you like to plug today, buddy?
I'll go ahead and plug Get Played, the podcast that I'm on with Nick Weiger and Heather Ann Campbell. We just talk video games. We just did an episode about our top 10 favorite games ever each.
Good.
So that was really fun. And we have a Patreon, patreon.com/getplayed, where we have our complete back catalog, which took some doing, but that's all there. And also our Patreon exclusive show, Get Animated, where we talk about anime, and we're watching this show on Netflix called Pluto. That is a sort of gritty retelling of an Astro Boy arc. It's fantastic. It's really, really great. And two things that I love: detectives and robots. So that's it for me.
The only thing that could have made this game better for you is if there was robots.
Yeah, if I found out that Mr. Door was a robot or something, that'd be cool.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Alan Wake 3, who's to know what's possible?
Yeah.
Matt, thanks again, buddy. This was great chatting with you.
Thank you, Connor.
Haley, thank you again for joining me today and talking again about Alan Wake. This was so much fun. What do you want to plug on your way out?
Yeah, my name is Haley McClain. I'm a video game lawyer, so if you're a game dev and you need legal help, hit me up. I know about games and the law. My law firm's called Voyer Law, so honestly, if you just Google my name, I'll show up there at some point. But yeah, I focus on helping game devs set up their companies, get their agreements in order, read their publishing agreements, all that fun stuff. And then I'm also, community manager over at MinnMax, and I'm on content there a lot, and actually am now taking over hosting roles for our bonus podcast we're going to do once a week, so that's really fun. So
Congrats,
there's still the
by
main
the way.
Yes, thank you. So it's just kind of things that we can't get to on the main podcast. We're going to be talking about there, and tease for upcoming next week. I haven't talked about it yet. I'm having Charles Hart talk about the new Phoenix Wright game with me on Monday.
Ooh.
Yeah, so he's associate editor at Game Informer, but he's also just came on for MinnMax too, doing a lot of video editing for Ben behind the scenes. So he's like a MinnMax crew person too. And I was talking to him about Phoenix Wright, and he's played a lot of them, so that'll be fun to talk about that with him, and also just the fact that I'm a lawyer also make that more fun too. And that I love Phoenix Wright. I have my Phoenix Wright statue behind me. So that'll be fun. So that's going to be episode on Monday, and it's still a call-in talk show kind of vibe in the later half. We have there's a whole, I don't need to do the whole Patreon explanation, but people can call in live and talk to us too, so that's really fun. And that's just over at MinnMax. And yeah, besides that, my social is HaleyFax on Twitter mostly /
Awesome. Are you Haley Fax on Twitch as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I popped in to watch you play a little Overwatch 2. I think it was last week at this point.
Oh,
and it was, what a good time.
Embarrassing, I still play that game, but I'm going to play that game until the servers turn off, because I don't know why, but I love that game even though it's so monetizing now.
Hey, someone's got to, you know?
Someone's got to be there in the servers, yeah.
Well, Haley, this has been so much fun to have you back on the show. And if anyone's out there, go listen to Haley's solo episode all about Night in the Woods that came out just a few weeks ago. Matt was my, I think, third guest ever, third or fourth, talking about Guitar Hero back in 2019.
Hell yeah.
Let's see. That's pretty much it. But I'll go ahead and just close this out with some plugs of my own. The show art for Call Me By Your Game is done by Glenn J. You can find his other great work on Instagram at glenn.jay. You can follow the show all over social media. If you want to support us on Patreon, if you like the conversation I had with these two lovely folks about video games, we have an insane amount of bonus content there. Find a tier that's right for you. Starts at $1, goes up to a bunch that you could spend if you want. But there's a ton of great podcasts there. That's at patreon.com/super NPC Radio. And that'll go ahead and do it for co-op episode 43. We will see you on the next one.